Wow, I just wanted to simply filter my items. Why did I need a PhD in this? I was expecting something very simple, something you could easily knock out within a day, but I ended up watching so many videos. I mean, look at how many different setups you can have just for filtering items. It is ludicrous. So to kind of give some general idea of what I'm talking about, a sorting system is a very basic structure that anybody who has tons of items in Minecraft will definitely want to build. You have three components. You have your storage chests, you have your filtering, and you have the item transport. Surprisingly, all three have different types. For storage, it's quite simple. You can have these chests, or you can have something like barrels. Well, that's not too complicated. Getting the items in it, that right there is, in and of itself, very difficult. And I'm not even going to bother talking about the item transport because, boy, again, you can spend so long just learning about this stuff. So item transport will be another video, but for now, let's just talk about the filtering systems here. Briefly, how this works. You have a hopper that is overfilled with a bunch of junk items and then the item you want to sort. As that item goes over the hopper, it can go over the hopper in many different ways. In this case, we're using other hoppers. But when it goes over there, it will start being filtered out into your chest. And you can see right here, this one's also working to filter out and put it in the chest. It sounds very simple, doesn't it? You wouldn't think that it shouldn't be that complicated, but yeah, just look at this. Where to begin? I guess the best spot to begin is to talk about the 4 different types of filters. The first type I'm going to talk about, I'm going to call the basic design. This design can be found pretty much anywhere. When people are wanting to talk about filtering, odds are you're going to see this. This because it's the simplest and least resource intense. I ended up finding videos from Mysticat, iCraftMC, Shulkercraft, and Omledu, which all talked about somewhat different designs. Each design had its pros, its cons. Some of them are a bit baffling in design, but if you look at the Redstone, it's all fairly similar. If you want to learn how to build these, go check out the channel. I'm not going to talk about how to build them, much like my other video involving the water elevators. If you want to learn it, go watch their video. As you see here with all 4 of them, they're all a very similar basic design. You have your hopper, which contains your items. Then you have a comparator, which just powers redstone. When the hopper gets overfilled, it will turn off the redstone and allow the hopper to drain. And all of these do the exact same thing at varying degrees. For instance, as you can see, this one's much longer. This one's a lot more compact, a lot smaller. This one here, it has overflow protection, while these ones don't. And then this one, which sadly is only in Bedrock because apparently redstone does not go down glass in Java. But yeah, this design here, it ends up being a little bit less laggy because you don't have repeaters. This is where I ended up diving deeper into understanding redstone because the videos talked an awful lot about lag and lag proof. For instance, Omledu talked a bit about how, use this design, it will decrease lag significantly, which might be a good thing on Bedrock, given the stories I've heard about Bedrock. But I didn't really understand much about it until I started reading up and found out that involving lag, it's involving the light engine. As you can see, like with the shadows we have here. Because whenever something turns on, as in a light turns on, it will activate the light engine, and the light engine can induce lag, especially when you have a lot of redstone. And the 2 items which will produce light, surprisingly, happens to be redstone torches and repeaters. Both of these produce light. And because of that, whenever you're in a dark area and you have a sorting system working, these will activate the light system, which will then lag your system. In this case, just filling it up with frog lights should work pretty well. The more frog lights you have, the less light updates that need to be done because these will be saturated. But yeah, these all work very well, very simple. Then take your pick. The next set of filters that I identified on YouTube, I'm calling the copper bulb design. In these cases, they all utilize the copper bulb kind of as a T flip-flop to track when the hopper should be drained and not. Special thanks to Rapscallion1338, Yeller, and Ferranocraft for their designs. Each one has their pros and cons. For instance, Rapscallion1338's design, has a lot of extra storage if you look. However, it's a massive pain in the butt to set up. And yeah, I think that's why you need the extra storage. But yeah, for his design, the copper bulb is in the front. So whenever you have items filtering, let's go ahead and grab an item, start sending it through. So yeah, whenever an item is filtering, you can see it turning off, which can tell you, oh, items are filling up. And it gives a nice flare so you know exactly what is being filled in your base. Kind of makes me one reason why I kind of want to set it up in mind, but this was just trying to set up these three was a massive pain in the butt. And even Rapscallion suggests use a different design because this was a pain to set up. But it does look quite nice. That leaves the other two from Yeller and Ferranocraft. For both of those, they use a very similar setup. You have an observer, which is tracking redstone, and then you have a comparator, which is tracking how much items are within our hoppers. Once a certain signal is met, it will then turn off the copper bulb and then allow it to drain. For Yeller's design, he's using a composter as a means to increase the signal over the observer. That way, a certain threshold has to be met by the hopper in order to activate it. In this case, it is set to 41, which actually works very well because that makes this overflow protected, which is quite nice. And then as you can see here, I added in some bulbs, even though largely because I'm trying to control for the copper bulbs, because those will update the light engine, which would increase a certain level of lag. In fact, for his setup, he recommends using the fully oxidized version. But in this example, I just used the unoxidized. For Ferranocraft, he did somewhat similar, but instead he put a repeater on the end. So what happens is, once the hopper fills up, it will then activate the repeater, which will activate the observer and change the bulb. All of them work fairly well. They all have a pretty small, a little bit more compact is quite nice. I would definitely recommend the copper bulb design if you have a little bit more resources, because it is a bit more compact and it is less laggy. Now the third design came out recently with the release of the copper golem. Hey, how's it going? Thanks to Mortings and Avoyance for their videos talking about this. And basically what goes on is you have a copper golem in the back. He's just patiently waiting for work. As you can see, how's it going, buddy? And then what you do is you get an item. Yeah, we'll take some redstone. You toss it into the system for filtering. It will pipe its way down over to the copper chest. And then eventually he'll go, oh, it's time to work. There we go. And then from there, he'll just start filling in all the chests. He's going to look right now. Oh, and there you go. Nice. I added this a little bit here because otherwise he'll keep opening the copper chest over and over and over again. However, one of the weird things I found is that surprisingly, the copper chest does not produce a signal when there's a block on top of it. So I ended up setting it up where there's a double checking. We have one comparator checking the input hopper, and then the other comparator is just keeping track of how many items are in it. That way, once it's fully empty, it can then drop the piston back down and thus prevent him from making a whole lot of noise. One of the added benefits to this design is that you can have multi-item sorting. For instance, right here, you can see I have more than just one item of redstone in here. All of these other ones are single item sorters. This is multi-item. So it had me looking to see if there's any other multi-item sorting. And I found out there is indeed a multi-item filtering system. However, it is ludicrously complicated. In fact, it is so complicated, it would deserve a video in and of itself. It is that ludicrous. Now, for fun, I decided to kind of look up and see, is there a way to compact a lot of the items? And I found out that Yeller had a video which actually talked about this. In his video, he talked about this design right here, which is the crafter setup using his copper bulb design. Once the crafter reaches a certain signal, it will then activate the redstone, which will activate the copper bulb, and it will cause it to flick. I'll go ahead and toss in some iron ingots. As you can see here, we're now filtering, and then voila, you can see it working. So yeah, this was actually a very nice system design, and I tried to implement it actually because I wanted to double it up. Right here, the very first item, which is an iron nugget, leads to an iron ingot, finally to a block of iron. And the idea is that once we have too many iron nuggets, we then start making iron ingots, and then when we have too many of those, we then proceed to start making blocks of iron. And here you can see I did tile it up. However, I found a problem when trying to build this design, and it was quite shocking actually. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's fill this up almost full. As you can see, we have 8 iron ingots in this crafter. The light has turned on, the signal is poised, everything is ready to work. What would you think would happen if I put in 1 more iron ingot? You would think, it should fire. As you see, the light is off, and we should have a new block of iron. However, it doesn't do that. Look at this. It gets stuck. I ended up digging deeper in to figure out why, and apparently it all has to do with timing. Because of how long it takes for the redstone signal to activate the observer, which would then turn on and off the bulb, it's actually just fast enough to turn on and off immediately that it gets filled. So it is very efficient in speed. However, because of that, you run the risk of this particular scenario where if you accidentally fill up 8 out of the 9, it will clog and it won't work anymore. It just doesn't work. Which is very annoying. Now if you put in 2, it worked. So yeah, because of that, I had to actually go back and try and modify it a bit. Hence this slight update. And this is one reason why I had to get a PhD in Redstone to figure this stuff out. So as you can see here, the way that this new setup works is we've extended the redstone by 1. So as you can see, I added in 1 more observer to send the signal down to the copper bulb. And then instead of using a composter, I used a crafter with 6 of the blocks blocked out. And what that means here is that when we start filling it in, so let's go ahead and do that. Go ahead and add in our nuggets. What will happen is this will start filling in. You can see that the bulb immediately goes on and off. And then here, this is no longer tethered to quickly putting items in. It can now just activate as soon as it is full. And that way, we can now go from the smallest unit to the largest unit without it potentially clogging. But yeah, these are the filters that I found. If you know of any more, be sure to tell me. I'm very interested and I'd like to kind of see what else is out there for storage systems. I'm currently using the basic designs, but I'm definitely going to switch over to the copper bulbs. These are just too good. Until then, like and subscribe, and have a good one.